What's up, guys? MLS Aces podcast, episode 237. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. It has been a little bit since you've heard my voice, seen my face, however you take in this podcast. I feel like I'm saying that every, month or so. Sorry about all of that. No guests this week. I figured we kind of just do maybe a little bit of a quicker episode, kind of just chat about what's going on with the podcast, chat about obviously the news around the Major League Soccer, USMNT world, and everything like that. Podcast, as far as episodes come, I'm going to try to do them as weekly as I possibly can. Things are a little crazy right now, as per what I announced at this point, a few months ago. Getting married, right? All that stuff is a little nuts. State of the world, a little nuts. So episodes will be coming out weekly, if anything, bi-weekly at any point. So if a week does go by where an episode doesn't come out of the podcast or the show, or however you intake this, don't freak out, don't worry, don't message me on Twitter, because I've gotten a little bit of that. Episodes will come out, just maybe need a week here and there to handle things going on personally. Nothing bad, just hectic, crazy life. So that's the only podcast update I wanted to give. Really, again, apologies about missing the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, the MLS US soccer world has absolutely exploded. Congratulations to LAFC, Los Angeles FC, on winning MLS Cup. Congratulations to the Portland Thorns on winning the NWSL title. Congratulations to San Antonio FC on winning the USL Championship. South Georgia Tormenta on winning the USL League One title, and the Michigan Stars on winning the NISA title as well. I think I covered every pro soccer league here in the U.S. But obviously, the main focus of this show, of this podcast, is Major League Soccer. So I want to just quickly talk about that LAFC title. I don't want to dive too deep into it because obviously some time has passed. You've heard Extra Time, you've heard MLS Gone Wild, you've heard MLS Now, you've heard, just every other show, the Cooligans, whatever it may be. You've heard shows, people talking about it, radio, Twitter, however you take in your MLS content. You've seen the reactions, right? LAFC did something in 2022 that is absolutely incredible. Absolutely, I think, overlooked for the season they had. Yes, they didn't go out with all of their brand new shiny toys, and they didn't break that MLS single season point record set by the Revolution. But what they did was still awesome, right? What they did is still a top, I think, 7 season all time as far as points in the regular season, securing the Supporter Shield title with the Philadelphia Union biting on their ankles for that entire kind of end of the season stretch. You go into the playoffs, you beat your biggest rival in the league. You beat an Austin FC team that was absolutely hot, was absolutely dominant, had arguably the best player of the Major League Soccer season on it, and LAFC really neutralized him. And then you go into an MLS Cup against that Philadelphia Union team that I mentioned before, where they tied you on points. They were just as quote unquote good as you as far as points, and an absolute madness of a game. There's no other way really to describe it. You had red cards, you had backup goalkeepers, you had penalty kicks, you had stoppage time, game tying goals, you had super subs, you had Gareth Bale, you had Andre Blake. It was just an absolutely incredible, just mess shit show of a game. Awesome game. It was arguably the greatest MLS Cup that I think we've watched in recent memory, and maybe this MLS 2.0, 3.0, whatever you want to say that we're in. But at the end of the day, right? LAFC, they did what they had to do. Yes, it was a Gareth Bale miraculous goal in a big time game. Yes, it was PKs, but LAFC took home the MLS Cup title. They took home the Supporter Shield. They took home a brace of, or what's it called? Not a brace. It's a brace of trophies on the season. And at the end of the day, they are your MLS Cup champions, and it's very well deserved. And we'll see, obviously, along with every other MLS club, how these rosters maintain and continue into the 2023 season, especially with some of these CCL teams and everything like that. Mentioning one CCL team, the Philadelphia Union, obviously the losers in that 2022 MLS Cup game. An absolutely amazing season from them. Again, you put up a top 7 all-time points record at the end of the day, along with the along with LAFC in this 2022 season. You had historic defense. You had, some of the greatest single season performances like a Daniel Gazdag or like a Kai Wagner, right? And Andre Blake. The Philadelphia Union should not be overlooked in this. They should have won this game, but at the end of the day, the winner is what the winner is, and you can't argue that. So Philadelphia, keep your head high. Duke fans, you guys killed it. I got to see you guys live this year. Absolutely great bunch of people. And I hope for your future success. Obviously not past NYCFC, but I hope for your future success as well. But this MLS offseason is already kind of going off to a wild, wild start. I think we should probably start with the new guys coming into 2023, St. Louis City SC. They've already started their roster build through trades, through free agent signings, through expansion draft. And I apologize again for missing the expansion draft coverage and being able to talk about it, shortly after it happened. But let's talk a little bit about St. Louis SC. Obviously, they've already added Aziel Jackson from Minnesota, Jared Cloud from Austin. They were able to sign winger Rasmus Alm from Elfsborg over in Europe. Tim Parker was a huge addition from the Houston Dynamo. Tim Parker is a dude who is one of the better center backs in Major League Soccer that I feel like people just kind of forget about because he was on, not to offend the Houston Dynamo fans out there, he was on a forgetful Houston Dynamo team for the last few seasons. Before that, yes, he was with the Red Bulls and he had success there, but before that with the Vancouver Whitecaps, he was on pretty much a forgetful Vancouver Whitecaps team for his time there. Tim Parker's a very good center back, a very good defender, a veteran of this league, and I think he's a solid guy to help build a back line around when you're thinking about an expansion team coming in. So I really love that Tim Parker signing. Through the expansion draft now, they added guys like John Nelson from FC Cincinnati, John Bell from the New England Revolution, who I feel like John Bell's a really good pickup. I feel like he could be that third center back you want on your team, that spot starter, that dude who you bring in late on that back line sub. Indiana Vasilev, they acquired his rights from Miami. Obviously, he's on loan from Aston Villa over in the Premier League. So St. Louis would have to work out some kind of deal with Aston Villa to either get him on loan, get him on a full-time signing, whatever that may be. But they do have his rights, and if they can bring him over, I really like that. I feel like Vasilev could be a starter, could be one of your first attacking pieces off the bench. So I really like that. And then striker Nicholas Giacchini from Orlando City. Obviously, Giacchini's kind of had his blow up over the last year when he was called into the USMNT for the Gold Cup last summer. Then, when things really weren't working out with his time over in France, getting the move over to Orlando City, never really got time on the field, to be completely honest. I think, they were trying to ramp him up and then into being able to play 90 minutes. And then, things just never really worked out. So at the end of the day, Giacchini looks like he's going to be a backup striker option for St. Louis. And for a young kid, a USMNT, player, a dude who has European experience in League On and League Two, I think Giacchini could be a great addition to have on that team as well. Again, spot starter, maybe one of your first attacking pieces off the bench. I like it a lot there. So that's really St. Louis's start to this offseason. They've really kicked things off. A lot of interesting talking points there, and I think really a lot of strong pieces to build the roster in year one. Next, let's talk a little bit of managerial news that's popped up. Houston, we talked about them before. Obviously, letting go of Paulo Nagamura a few weeks ago. They have officially signed their next manager in club history. They have gone with one-time U.S. Open Cup champion and one-time MLS Coach of the Year winner, Ben Olsen. You know him from his time at DC United. That ended a little ugly, but he has been in an upper management position within the DC Washington Spirit organization. Now he wants to get back into the coaching ranks, and Houston's where it's at. I'm not against this move, I think, as much as some people are. I'm not saying that Ben Olsen at the end of his time in DC was great. It was far from great. It was ugly, to be very honest. But I think sometimes a change of scenery is needed. Look at a Diego Fagundes going to Austin from New England. Yes, that's a player, but at the same exact time, I think the same narrative can be upheld for managers as well. Ben Olsen was with DC and has been in DC, the organization, for a very long time. I think a change of scenery. I think new maybe people to work with, new coaches, new upper management that he's interacting with every single day could be a positive thing. I'm not saying it will be. I'm not saying it'll work out. I'm not saying Ben Olsen is going to turn Houston into a contender along with Austin and Dallas down in the Texas area, right? I don't know. I don't think so, but I'm just saying I think this could be a positive move. You have a guy who knows MLS. I think it could be good if Ben Olsen, starts doing the right things. Obviously, losing a guy like Tim Parker right away sucks. But I'm sure Ben's going to want to put his staple on this organization, his players, his DPs, his signings, everything like that. They have some really good pieces there, and I'm excited to kind of see where things go. Obviously, just to kind of pair along with some Houston Ben Olsen news, Houston also traded away Fafa Pico to Nashville FC within the last 2 weeks. So just also getting rid of another attacking option there, maybe one of the bright spots on the roster. We'll see where Ben in this Houston front office really takes things, especially as reentry drafts and free agency is all coming along. But the other piece of managerial news that I wanted to talk about is Nick Cushing officially getting that interim title removed from his title. That was really bad wording, really bad sentence making there. But Nick Cushing no longer interim manager at New York City FC. He is now the official manager. Obviously, making it to an Eastern Conference final with NYCFC this season, winning a Campeones Cup over Atlas this season. It was an ugly start for Cushing's reign with New York City FC, but I think at the end he really got it figured out. You can see how much the players in this locker room respect, and want to work under Nick Cushing. So I really do think that he is going to be the next, great manager in NYCFC history. When you look at the Patrick Vieira's, the Ronnie Dylas, and now you are going to run into Nick Cushing, I think, as being just as good as what those guys are when his time eventually comes to an end, as well as we've seen with NYCFC managers. Let's continue. We'll stick with some NYCFC news. Anton Tinnerholm, he is no longer going to be coming back to New York City. It's not been something that's been covered up. It's been very obvious that he is going to leave New York City at the end of this season. He is returning back to his home country. He's returning back to Sweden to rejoin Malmo, the club that he actually came from, to come to New York City. So Anton Tinnerholm, you are an absolute legend of NYCFC. You are one of the greatest players to ever put on the Citizens Pigeons jersey, however you want to say it. And good luck back at home in Sweden. We will miss you over here in New York. Let's dive into some other player news. Orlando City, they added left back Luca Petrasso from Toronto FC, with Joao Moutinho being a free agent with heavy rumors of him potentially heading to Europe. It doesn't really surprise me that Orlando City went and got a left back early. Petrasso had some bright moments with TFC last year. I don't know. He is not going to be an exact talent replication at left back for Orlando City for Joao Moutinho, but I do think Petrasso has a lot of positives to him. He's young, and I think he could be one to look out for the future if you give him consistent games and minutes at left back over the next few seasons or so. Let's stick with Orlando. They did gain Petrasso. They did lose a pretty big piece to what made their 2022 season so successful with the US Open Cup title. Junior Urso in Orlando City, they agreed to mutually terminate his contract as Urso wanted to return to Brazil for personal reasons. I hope, for whatever those reasons are, I hope they're not negative, or they're not overly negative. I hope there may be some positive things. Maybe he just wants to be back around his family. But Junior Urso is definitely a legend of Orlando City at this point, giving them their only title so far in club history. And it's sad to see a guy as talented, as fun as the Bear was, the Bear goal. I love it. So Junior Urso, it's sad to see you leave. I hope it's for positive reasons, and I hope that you can have a successful rest of your career down in Brazil for sure. The last player move that I want to talk about, or I guess two more really quickly. DC United, they add center back Derek Williams from the LA Galaxy. Obviously, when the Galaxy added Martin Caceres at the end of last year, it really kind of locked down one of the two center back spots. I really think it was between Williams and Sega Koulibaly for the other. Sega Koulibaly seemed to partner well with Caceres and fit in at that other center back spot, leaving Derek Williams to be the extra center back, that third center back. But pretty high contract on a third center back there. So they were able to send Derek Williams over to DC United underneath Wayne Rooney and really, pair up the like a similar countryside, the Irish international defender with the English manager of Wayne Rooney. So I really think that it could be maybe a positive step for Derek Williams getting consistent minutes. Maybe, underneath a guy like Wayne Rooney, he can really grow and learn more. I don't know that too much there, but I do think it was obviously a big contract for LA to get off their books. Good for them there. And then another kind of lost player to Major League Soccer is the announcement of the retirement of left back Domenico Criscito from Toronto FC. I think this one was a little bit of a shocker. I think Toronto, when they signed him this summer, expected to have him for, obviously the rest of that 2022 season, along with next season. But Criscito has decided to retire at the age of 35. He put in a lot of good minutes for TFC at the end of that last season. I think, again, maybe a player that TFC was kind of relying to have on that back line, but unfortunately they won't. And they'll have to find some options at left back to figure out heading into 2023. But we know Bob Bradley, we know the project's going, and I'm not going to say it's going well, but it's going right now, and hopefully they can figure things out. The last piece of MLS news that I really want to get into, but obviously before start talking about the World Cup, because hey guys, guess what? The World Cup's 5 days away or 4 days away or whatever it is at this point. So we should probably talk about that. And like I said, I just have one more piece of MLS news really to kind of chat about quickly because it's near and dear to my heart. Going back to New York City, the baseball stadium jokes are going to stop, everybody, coming in 2027, but the baseball stadium jokes will stop. New York City FC announced a brand new stadium coming to Queens in 2027. This is going to be a 25,000 capacity stadium. It's going to also be a 250 room hotel, also 2,500 units of housing in there, obviously mixed into the New York City, Queens metro area. Housing and all of that's super important. It's a lot of people. So I think that's also an awesome piece to this, added to the New York City metro area kind of landscape there. Jordan Griffin was one of the first ones to break this. Shout out to Jordan because he did an absolute great job in breaking it, covering it, keeping us NYCFC fans up to date. But I'm just excited, first soccer specific stadium in New York ever. That's awesome. That's cool. I'm glad that they were able to find a spot. I'm glad that they were able to find a spot on Long Island. As a native Long Islander, Queens is on Long Island, so everyone should know that, yes. But this is just cool. It's exciting to see more and more soccer-specific stadiums or just soccer stadiums in general, whether they're shared with an NFL team or whatever. That's here and there, but at least it's not a baseball stadium. And as an NYCFC fan, I can agree that baseball stadiums suck. Let's just get soccer specific stadiums. And I'm glad that New York City was eventually, finally, a decade later, able to figure this one out. Okay, that was a lot of MLS news. That was a lot of talking. That was a lot of me just going on to an MLS rant there to pretty much cover what's been happening over the last 2 weeks while I haven't been able to put out an episode. But let's talk about the World Cup. Like I said, the World Cup is days away. The USMNT's title run is just days away. We're going to win the 2022 World Cup. No, we're not. It's sad, it's depressing, but it's okay because this is all just a nice primer for 2026 when these guys are in their prime, when these guys have a World Cup under their belts, when these guys are playing the best soccer of their careers. This is all going to be true, guys. I just want you all to know that this is going to be true and we're going to win 2026. So just get excited for 2022. Let's see some positive performances. 2026, we're going to kill it. So USMNT World Cup. I'm going to just quickly run through the roster. Obviously, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you know who is on the roster. But goalkeepers, Matt Turner from Arsenal, Sean Johnson from New York City FC, Ethan Horvath from Luton Town. Defenders, Anthony Robinson from Fulham, Serginho Dest from AC Milan, DeAndre Yedlin from Inter Miami, Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach, Shock Moore from Nashville SC. Don't know why I said Nashville. Nashville SC. Cameron Carter Vickers from Celtic. Walker Zimmerman from Nashville SC. Aaron Long from the New York Red Bulls, and Tim Ream from Fulham. The midfield, Tyler Adams from Leeds United, Kellen Acosta from the 2022 MLS Cup champions LAFC, Weston McKennie from Juventus, Yunus Musa from Valencia, Christian Roldan from the 2022 CONCACAF Champions League winners, Seattle Sounders. That was a lot in one sentence. Luca De La Torre from Celta de Vigo, and Brendan Aronson from Leeds United. And then in the forwards, Giovanni Reina from Borussia Dortmund, Christian Pulisic from Chelsea, Timothy Weah from Lille, Jordan Morris from your 2022 CONCACAF Champions League champion Seattle Sounders, Jordan Jesus Ferreira, FC Dallas, Josh Sargent from Norwich City, and Haji Ray from Antalyaspor. A lot there to cover. I think we should start with obviously who's here, who I'm excited about, everything like that. Obviously, the goalkeeping unit, there's one massive name missing in Zach Steffen, who I'll talk about in a few minutes. But obviously, you look at Matt Turner right away, right? Almost presumed starter for this group. If he's not the starter, I will be heavily, heavily upset. He's currently the backup to Aaron Ramsdale, right now at Arsenal, but he's been getting your Europa League minutes, and he's been killing it in Europa League. I think he has, almost as many shutouts as games played that he has for that group. So it's absolutely sick to see Matt Turner make it. Obviously, making the jump from New England to Arsenal recently, and now getting the World Cup call up and doing well over in the Premier League. Sean Johnson, Ethan Horvath. It's really going to come down to, we're hopefully not going to see the backup keeper. I personally think Sean Johnson's the number 2 to Ethan Horvath at the 3, but at the end of the day, these are two guys who've been killing it for club and country. We've seen them represent the U.S. well over the last year and a half, 2 years. We've seen them represent their clubs well over the last year and a half, 2 years, and they're both well deserving of it. I guess I'll actually kind of talk about snubs as we get through roster position groups. So let's talk Zach Steffen. Wild to me that Zach Steffen's not part of this. Wild to me because Zach Steffen has been a Greg Berhalter dude over the last 2 years. He has played important games for Greg Berhalter, started important games for Greg Berhalter over the last 2 years. Honestly, I thought it was just going to be Turner, Horvath, and Steffen, not any shot at Sean Johnson. I think Sean Johnson deserved to be there over Ethan Horvath, but I thought Steffen and Turner were almost the 1 and 2 that you can almost like Sharpie into this lineup. And the fact that he's not there, I know he's struggling right now for Middlesbrough. I know he missed the last USMNT call-up window with some injury potentially, some personal things going on potentially. I don't know what's going on there. I'm sure we'll find out maybe post-World Cup. But, Zach Steffen not being part of this group is kind of insane to me. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm still not processing it, even though the roster drop has been out for over a week now. It's going to be wild to see him there and not see him there. But I guess it is what it is, and you have to perform for your club right now. And the 3 guys who got called in have been, and Steffen hasn't. So I guess that's the tail of the tape for soccer leading into the World Cup roster decision. Let's look at the defenders. Obviously, I think the big thing here to look at is you presumably have 4 right backs and 1 left back. Obviously, we've seen Serginho Dest play left back for the USMNT. Hasn't been great. I don't love it, but it looks like he is going to be the backup left back option with, guys like Sam Vines or George Bello or Kevin Paredes not really stepping up or not being ready at this moment in time to be that next left back option. Joe Scally can also play a little bit of left back. I think he kind of showed out a little bit more than Dest at left back in his small sampling size for the USMNT, but we'll see what Greg Berhalter likes, who that next left back option could be. If we even need a backup left back at this point, maybe Anthony Robinson plays every minute for the USMNT for us as we go on to win the World Cup. I don't know. I'm just saying I do think it would be nice to have a backup left back option plan. And to me, it looks like when you're just looking at the roster, Dest or Scally, I prefer Scally, but we'll see. Obviously, let's jump over to that right back. Dest, I think, is the presumed starter. I think DeAndre Yedlin is maybe the presumed right back backup. I think he is only mainly because of experience, mainly because he's the only dude on this roster who's played at a World Cup before. Yes, Joe Scally is a starter in the in the Bundesliga, and Shaq Moore has been around, but I think Yedelin's that number two guy behind Dest, if you ask me, just for his experience of, again, playing in a World Cup, playing in big games, how much experience he's had around the USMNT group overall. And I kind of want to lead that into my one fullback that I was pretty shocked who didn't get the call up, and that's Reggie Cannon. Because again, Reggie Cannon has seemed to be a Greg Berhalter guy. I know he hasn't been playing a ton in Portugal over the last few weeks, but again, similar to Zach Steffen, he's been around the group. He's always been called into camps, and we also haven't really seen Shaq Moore in the last year for the USMNT. So I just kind of assumed it was going to be Dest, Yedlin, Scally, Cannon, move forward with the right backs, and that was really going to be it, right? But I guess Shaq Moore getting minutes at Nashville and Reggie Cannon not really getting minutes with Boavista has led to that decision. So at the end of the day, we have our fullback set. I'm shocked Reggie Cannon isn't there over a Shaq Moore, but again, maybe that's just a me thing. For center backs, we have Cameron Carter Vickers. Like I said, I think I prefer CCV to be the starter next to Walker Zimmerman. I've said this on Twitter. I think I've said this on past podcasts as well. For me, that's the best center back pairing of this group of four that we have. Knowing Greg Berhalter, it's most likely going to be Zimmerman and Long, but I think Zimmerman and CCV is the play. It really does suck here because like we saw in some of our titles that we've won over the last 2 years, Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman have been the duo, have been the pair. It sucks that, Miles got injured so long ago and we haven't been able to see him and Zimmerman continue that awesome defensive pairing that they were. Even Greg Berhalter announced during the roster decision that Miles Robinson would have been here. So it sucks. I would have obviously loved to sit here and say it was going to be Zimmerman and Miles Robinson and we move on and it's not even a question, but it's Zimmerman and question mark. Again, if I know Greg Berhalter from what we've seen, it's going to be Zimmerman and Long. I hope it's Zimmerman and CZV. I'm happy Tim Ream got the call up. I'm not happy why, I guess, because really, again, the Miles Robinson injury, the Chris Richards injury, I think Tim Ream was that next guy up. He's a starter in the Premier League. He's a starter for Fulham. He's playing pretty well for Fulham, even at a little bit of his older age. I think he could just be a little bit of experience. Yes, he hasn't played in a World Cup like DeAndre Yedlin, but he's been around the USMNT group. He's been a professional soccer player for a long time. I think maybe just kind of adding a little bit of calm, collective experience to the back line could be what Tim Ream brings. Obviously, he can also play left back. I really don't want to see it because we saw Tata Martino in Mexico absolutely abuse Tim Ream at left back. But we'll get to that road if we see Greg Berhalter subbing in Tim Ream and we see Anthony Robinson's number go up. In the midfield, I think, it's the MMA, right? It's Musa, McKennie, Adams. It's that's the grouping. Whether we see Musa drop a little bit deeper and playing in a double pivot next to Adams, or we see McKennie in that role, I prefer to see Adams and Musa as a double pivot, McKennie playing a little bit in front of them. I think the three of them just work really, really well together. I don't want to see Adams in a single pivot. For reasons many people across MLS and USMNT, Twitter and podcasts and shows have talked about. Adams does a lot for the USMNT. I think he's the most important player for the USMNT. I just think when he's in a single pivot, he can get pulled out of positions too much when he's trying to do too much because he has to do at points too much for the USMNT. So I would like to see Adams and Musa in that double pivot, have McKennie play in front of them, have maybe McKennie and Musa be a little bit fluid between that double pivot too. So we'll see. I think that's the starting lineup, right? I think Brendan Aronson may be coming in a little bit more attack-minded for playing in front of that double pivot. Could be an interesting piece, could be something to watch out for because he is playing obviously more attacking in that midfield for Leeds. I also think you could see Brendan Aronson out on the wing, and that's kind of lead into that winger or that forward grouping. The wingers, I think it's Pulisic and Reina starting. If you ask me, I think it's easy. Pulisic, Reina, maybe Pulisic and Aronson if you want to have Reina coming off the bench, but I think it's Pulisic and Reina. Timothy Weah as a third winger option, even as a starting option. I love it. I think we have a strong three wingers there. I'll finish off with the wingers and the Paul Arriola, Jordan Morris conversation. Paul Arriola has seemed to be, over the last 2 years, a Greg Berhalter guy. I've said it 15 times. Greg Berhalter did acknowledge it, though, during the roster announcement, saying there's always been an injury to someone in the group, whether it's been Reyna, whether it's been Weah, whether it's been Jordan Morris, right? Paul Arriola was always that next winger up. I thought Paul Arriola in the last 2 years has done enough to prove for the USMNT that he should be part of this winger group. Apparently not. And he got the boot for Jordan Morris. That's nothing against Jordan Morris. It's just he's been injured. This year, yes, he did score a good amount of goals. Yes, he did play well, and yes, he did have a CCL title underneath his belt. But I don't know if he did enough for me to outweigh Paul Arriola. Maybe Jordan Morris does some different stuff on the field for a Paul Arriola, but just again, him, Stefan, and I think one more player that we'll talk about with the strikers really does suck for me not to see them in this group. But I think it's, you're splitting hairs here with the fourth winger on the team. I think it's going to be Pulisic. I think it's going to be Reyna. I think it's going to be Weah. I think Aronson could potentially get minutes over Jordan Morris too. But we'll see, obviously, what Greg Berhalter decides. And the strikers with Ferrara, Sargent, and Wright. Haji Wright being a part of this group is wild to me. Not anything against Haji Wright. I think he's scoring a ton in Turkey. I think he's a very good striker, and I think he should be part of this group. But after the last time we saw Haji Wright with the USMNT and the comments Greg Berhalter made about his performances and his showing, I'm surprised we see him again, to be completely honest, especially with options of a Ricardo Pepi, who has been a Greg Berhalter guy, who has started big games for the USMNT over the last year, a Pifak, who is starting and playing well with Union Berlin, a Brandon Vasquez, who hasn't been a part of this group. Neither really has Haji, right? But Brandon Vasquez, who, yes, doesn't have a cap, but he's been scoring a ton in MLS, where you have a Jesus Ferrara who's been scoring a ton in MLS as well. So I'm just shocked Haji Wright's the third striker. It's the third striker. I really think we're only going to see two. I think Ferrara and Sargent are the 1 and 2 options for Berhalter. I think Ferrara should be the number one still right now, unless maybe we get a game where even Greg Berhalter has said Josh Sargent plays in England. He knows the English players a lot. He's most likely, I think we're most likely going to see Sargent start against England in the group stage game. So I guess it's just going to kind of be who's scoring, who's hot, who's playing well, who's training well. But I think right now to start, especially against Wales, it's going to be Jesus Ferrara. And guys, it's the World Cup. We're back in the World Cup. Like, this is insane. This just get excited for the USMNT. Let's just get excited for this, because we're gonna take it home. Okay, we're taking this home. Like, let's do this. We're going to win the World Cup. And if you're just listening to the podcast and heard me do 3 kisses into the mic, I'm kissing my USMNT jersey right now. I'm kissing the badge, because we're gonna do this. Like, we're gonna take this. We're gonna make it out of the group. We're gonna win a round of 16 game. I don't know if we're winning the World Cup. I will freak out if we do. But 2026, I think, is the play. Let's just have a good showing here and see, building up these guys into 2026, because this is the second youngest roster at the World Cup. That's insane. That's a good thing if we show out well. If we completely shit the bed and fall apart, then we have bigger issues. We have bigger issues to worry about. I want to throw out my prediction for the group stage here. I think it's going to be England 1 coming out of the group. I think it's going to be us 2 coming out of the group. And then this is maybe my quote unquote hot take. I think it's going to go Iran 3, Wales 4. So just my hot take leading into the World Cup. Okay. Last few things I want to talk about on this episode, and then I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. And I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. But obviously, Major League Soccer is also, home to clubs and players that live a majority of their time outside of the U.S. And I'm talking about Canada here. Canada is also represented in this 2022 World Cup. I want to quickly just kind of run through this roster and just, kind of give some love to some of the Canadian players because there are Canadian players, there's Canadian listeners to this podcast and the show and everything like that. Goalkeepers Milan Borjan from Red Star Belgrade, Dane St. Clair from Minnesota, and James Pantamis from Montreal. Obviously, the big exclusion here is Maxime Crepeau, who got injured in that MLS Cup game for LAFC. So I think he would have been there. I know he would have been there over James Pantamis, but Pantamis is the next guy up. The defenders, Sam Adekugbe for Hatyaspor, Richie Larea for Toronto, Alistair Johnson for Montreal, Kamal Miller for Montreal, Joel Waterman for Montreal, Derek Cornelius from Pantelokis. I just butchered the hell out of that. These plays in the Greek First Division, Greek Super League. And then Steven Vittoria, who plays for Chavez in Portugal's First Division. I think the quote unquote big exclusion here is Raheem Edwards for the Galaxy. I don't really think it's a big exclusion, to be completely honest. I just think he's honestly one of the few names that didn't get called into this Canadian roster. In the midfield, we have Sam Piette for Montreal. A lot of Montreal players in this World Cup, I will just say that. Liam Fraser, who plays in Belgium's second division. Atiba Hutchinson, who plays for Besiktas in Turkey. Steven Eustachio, who plays for Porto. Ismail Kone from Montreal. Jonathan Osorio for TFC. Mark Anthony Kaye for TFC. And David Witherspoon for St. Johnston. And then the group of forwards, Alphonso Davies, MLS legend for Bayern Munich, Liam Millar for Basel, Junior Hoylett for Reading, Tejan Buchanan for Club Brugge, Jonathan David for Lille, Kyle Laring for Club Brugge, Ike Ugbo for Troyes, and Lucas Cavallini for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Again, maybe the only name missing out of that forwards group being Theo Corbeanu for Blackpool. But at the end of the day, this Canada roster looks like the strongest grouping of players that you could possibly find for the Canadian men's national team. I think they're going to come out in that 3-5-2, 3-4-1-1, whatever you want to call it. Like they play a very fluid style of soccer. I like it a lot. I just think, it's going to be that three in the back. It's going to be Davies and Buchanan on out wide, with Stachio kind of holding it down in the middle, and then hopefully David and Larin banging it in up top, right? Like I think that's pretty much what you're going to expect for this Canadian men's national team. A lot of MLS dudes here, a lot of Montreal players, like I said. I'm very happy for Canada. I'm very happy for this group to get represented in this World Cup, and especially Atiba Hutchinson, like Canadian men's national team legend. The dude's like 40 years old. He's going to get a game in this World Cup. He should get a standing ovation from every Canadian men's national team fan, because this dude has done a lot for the country. This dude has done a lot for the Canadian men's national team, kind of just being the face of the country soccer wise. On the men's side, and not on overall. I think on the men's side only, right? But Atiba Hutchinson is a legend of Canadian soccer, and he deserves to get praised this World Cup. Same with Milan Borjan as well. My predictions for this group: I think Belgium finish first in this group. I'm gonna give Canada the hope. I'm gonna give it to them. I think Canada make it out of the group, finishing second. And then again, maybe my hot take here. I think Morocco finished third. I think Croatia finished last. I think Croatia is a very old group. I think they're a little washed. Watch them win the group, and I look like an idiot in the next few days. But the last thing I want to say about this, kind of just from an MLS perspective, when talking about the World Cup, we have 11 countries who have called up MLS players, or MLS, and I think one MLS Next Pro player to the 2022 World Cup. 35 MLS players and one MLS Next Pro player called into this World Cup. Canada calling in 11, USA calling in 9, Ecuador calling in 4. If you're an MLS fan, watch Ecuador. You're going to see MLS players play. Costa Rica with 3, Cameroon with 2, Uruguay with 2, Australia, Mexico, Poland, Switzerland, and Wales all calling in 1. Guys, the MLS Cup playoffs are over. MLS free agencies here. 2023 season is right around the corner, and teams are getting their rosters built now. So pay attention to your favorite MLS team now. The World Cup is freaking here, so make sure you guys are tuning into your country's game. Make sure you're watching. Make sure you're cheering. If you can legally drink, have a drink, celebrate, because we only get this once every 4 years. Yes, there's a lot of controversies in Qatar right now. Yes, Qatar looks like a mess right now with the World Cup, but celebrate and support your country, celebrate and support your players because they deserve it and they need it now more than ever. Like, I do this every single time. Let's go USA. I'm not going to do any I believe we will win. I hate the chant, but I do believe we will win and make it out of the group stage. I think that's a success. That's all I have to say. Thank you guys. Watch the World Cup. I love